Good too.
Yeah.
I was born in Florida, a little town called Milton, Florida. That's where my mom was raised. Her family's still from there, still lives there. When I was 3, we moved to the big town of Sebastian, Texas, which is about 10 miles south of Raymondville. Maybe 1,000 people or so, 1,200 people. My dad grew up there. And so it was a fun childhood, riding bikes in the streets, running around barefoot, riding horses, out with our BB guns. It was me and my 2 brothers, and then I had 3 cousins as well, all boys. And so we were a little gang that kind of roamed the streets and had a good time. When I was 11, we moved to Raymondville. I attended school in Raymondville, but lived in Sebastian. But we moved to Raymondville when I was 11. And that was like moving to the big town, man.
That was a big
Oh,
city.
yeah. Raymondville had a McDonald's and a Pizza Hut. Are you kidding me? That was big time. Moved to Raymondville, and then I graduated from Raymondville, of course. And my parents still live there. And then went to college, went to law school, and here I am.
So
married, 3 kids, and blessed.
Yeah, nice, man. Well, growing up in Raymondville, like, what was that like? What was like the kind of the overall, you're talking about kind of like, riding your bikes and doing things with your family and like that kind of stuff. I mean, like, what was life like back then? Because I do, growing up in a small town, it's like, man, if you had a McDonald's, that was like,
yeah, that
was big
Pizza
shit,
Hut,
right?
Yeah, that's big time.
Yeah,
for sure.
So like, when you were growing up, like, what were kind of some of the things that your mom or your dad kind of like instilled in you as you were growing up? What were kind of like the important parts of growing up? Like the things that kind of they would tell you, and then it's kind of carried through to like today.
Okay, one of them. Well, the 2 main things was education and work ethic. And both my parents have master's degree in education. My dad was a principal, my mom was a teacher. And so that was instilled at a very early age. It was not a matter of if you're going to go to college, it's you're going to go to college. That was just understood from a very early age. And the other one was work ethic. My dad always had these little side deals that he would do, and he I guess kind of would flip houses before it became really popular. He'd buy one and work on it. He used to do construction when he was younger.
Okay.
And so he would do all the work himself, which then meant Ryan was there with him doing a lot of that work. And so the summers a lot, we would get up early, we'd go out and do whatever it was, but it was pretty much working a lot of the weekends and a lot in the summers as well. And so that was something that was always instilled in me. And, he was, he got me up early all the time. If I went out, man, when I was in high school and I was just, got in super late at 7 o'clock in the morning or so, he's there, get up.
Opening up the window.
Yeah, opening up the window. What was crazy is that at that time, my room was upstairs and there was 2 separate air conditioners. And so what he would do is he would get up early and he'd just turn the air off. And you'd wake up with that film of sweat, just hating life. But it's carried over to this day, because I still get up at 5:30 usually most every morning. Yeah. My kids think I'm crazy, but that's just kind of something that I've done forever.
So early on, your dad was an entrepreneur, right? Because he was kind of doing he was doing kind of his own thing, and if he was flipping houses, I mean, he was that was kind of maybe it was a passion of his.
It was. He got his while he was a principal, he got his real estate license, and so he would do that a little bit on the side, and then became a broker as well. And so the buying and selling was all kind of intertwined. That was something that kind of grew up with as well. So, and I got my real estate license when I was 19.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and sold real estate for a little bit in college up until I guess right before I went to law school.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so I did that for a few years.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So very early on, work, entrepreneurship, sales. Man, I didn't know you were in real estate.
Yeah, I did that for about 3 years. It was fun. I had I learned quickly not to assume in real estate. Showed a house to a couple, and I thought I'd shown a few houses and kind of felt a little more comfortable. And we went into one room, and I told them, I said, well, this would be a great room for the baby. And I pointed to her and she was like, I'm not pregnant. And I was like, holy shit.
I did that too.
Let's just leave. You're not going to buy this house. We're done.
Everything gets hot.
Everything gets, like, oh my gosh.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. So, but anyway, I had some good times. Not all my showings went down like that, of course, but it was fun. Yeah.
So, like, growing up when you were in Raymondville, you grow from a very small town to a bigger town, but still kind of small too. Like, what were kind of your aspirations growing up? Did you know that you wanted to be an attorney like from a very early age, or was it kind of like what were your thoughts on like what life should be like, or did you think that you were going to be in Raymondville for the rest of your life, or what would you think?
I knew I wanted to be an attorney at a young age. I can't really remember when, but it's one of those where I don't really remember not wanting to be a lawyer. Second grade, maybe first grade, something like that. I don't know. One thing I did see growing up was a lot of people getting taken advantage of through just circumstances, socioeconomic, lack of education, whatever the situation was. And it was something that stood out to me. And it was, and I knew that law was one way, kind of a vehicle that I could come back and help some of these people. And so while I wanted to be, maybe before I even appreciated that, as I got a little bit older, it just became kind of more ingrained in me that yes, this is for sure what I want to do, so that I can come back and help people who find themselves in those unfortunate situations. Again, being taken advantage of. Willacy County, I guess the Valley in general, Willacy County in particular, has got kind of an interesting history, of certain things that have happened. And like I said, just kind of people being taken advantage of. And again, as a lawyer, it's something that I take a lot of pride in, the ability to be able to go in and, it's the whole David and Goliath. You can step in front of them, and the law and the courts and everything afford you that ability to stop that. And I think it's an incredible deal. I've loved being a lawyer I've been now 15 years, and it's
oh wow,
yeah. I know time goes
flies, time goes by really, really fast.
Yeah, exactly.
So you decided to go to law school, graduated from the University of
College or law school?
College.
From Pan Am.
Oh, from Pan Am.
Yeah,
okay, so
and then
UTPA.
Yeah. You were there at the same time, right?
More or less, yeah.
And then went to San Antonio to St. Mary's.
Okay.
Met my beautiful wife Rebecca 6 weeks after I got there.
Wow.
And then got engaged 11 months later and married 11 months after that.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Still in law school when all that happened?
I'm sorry.
Were you still in law school?
I was still in law school. I got married in law school. Yeah, I got married just at the end of my second year of law school.
Wow.
Yeah, she was a third year my first year.
Okay. And
so then she stayed and practiced for a couple of years. And then after I sat for the bar was when we came down and moved down here to the Valley.
And so because you both of y'all and she's originally from like Corpus.
She's from Corpus.
She's from Corpus. So y'all are married, living, going to school in San Antonio. What was it that brought you to the Valley?
I always knew I wanted to come back to the Valley, and that was kind of how I introduced myself. I was like, I'm coming back. This is, if this goes anywhere, we're moving to the Valley.
And she was okay with that?
You're along for the ride. Yeah, she was. Well, yeah, I guess.
Right.
She's cool with it now.
She's fine with it. Okay.
Yeah, because she'd been in San Antonio for 9 years before we
wow.
moved down here. So, and what was crazy is that we got here on a Saturday and found out we were pregnant on Sunday. So it's not like we can go to all the happy hour young lawyer events and stuff like that. So it was, yeah, but she loves it now.
Yeah.
She's got so many friends and everything. And so it's all good.
So, high school, what would you say is kind of like the biggest difference from, your mindset and your thoughts and ideas from when you were going to college? Because I think, I don't know, for me personally, it was like, I kind of had this idea when I was going to college. I was like, man, as soon as I graduate, I'm going to get this like awesome job, and I'm going to have this, and I'm going to have that, and my life's going to be here, and I want to move over there, and I'm going to like conquer the world kind of thing. My thoughts of success back then are way different than they are now. Like how, what's that been like for you? Has it pretty much stayed the same, or have things kind of like changed based off of your perspectives on things then to now?
No, I mean, it's, of course you're idealistic, you're naive, you're immature, you're some may say dumb, when you're that age. The world is, oh my God, and then you get as you kind of grow, and then kids and everything else like that, it obviously changes perspective. It also changes perspective on what's really important. When I was younger, it was all about this and that and fast cars, and I wanted all these cool things. And now it's like, I want all these cool things for my kids. I don't really care so much about me or whatever. I'm cool. But now that's kind of the biggest shift in everything, is how your kids basically, I never knew that growing up, understood that that's where that was going to take me. But now as a father, it's like, I don't care so much about me.
Right.
It's just I just want everything. Everything's for my kids now.
Right.
It has been, of course, forever.
Yeah. So it's like, well, you're not necessarily, if you're generating a certain amount of income, that income is now like, well, what can I do for my kids?
Absolutely. Yeah. Which,
Yeah. Wow.
natural, I guess, as a parent, and so.
Yeah, I mean, and so, I mean, going into law school, obviously, your wife already has a really good understanding of what that profession's about, what it kind of takes. What was kind of that transition between college? Obviously, I mean, y'all have a child on the way already, like right from the get-go. So you grew up very quickly, very fast, kind of all like at one time, right? Because it was like degree, wife, child on the way, house, car, mortgage, right? I always feel like those have been kind of those, what's the word? It's like, what is the word I'm looking for? I guess milestones, right? Like milestones is like, oh, I got my first car. I'm getting my first house. I'm going to have my first child. I'm finally getting married, right? Like all of these milestones, or maybe they're like, I don't want to say accomplishments, but they're just milestones in life that I think when you kind of grow up, you always kind of imagine that, right? Like maybe when you're 12 or something, you're like, one day I'm going to have this house, and one day I'm going to have kids, and I'm going to have all of these things. And so all of this stuff kind of comes in all together, right? You do all of this, and then somewhere along the ways from graduating and today, you decide to go into business for yourself, right? So that entrepreneurial spirit that maybe your dad had, and you kind of saw indirectly as he was doing kind of all of these things. Maybe it's a hereditary type trait, who knows, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe it was something that was learned. But I mean, what kind of enabled you to do that? Like, how did you go from recent graduate to owning your own firm?
So I went out on my own shortly out of law school. And looking back, it probably wasn't the smartest thing in the world. We had little to no money in savings. Asa was 6 weeks old, I believe. 6 or 8 weeks old. And I decided I'm going to hang a shingle and let's do it. But what's crazy, or what's interesting, is that when failure is not an option, you just, it's, you have no choice. There's no other option but success. Why? Because you can't fail. Because you have your family, because you have kids that are supporting, that are needing you, that you have to support, and so it's incredible when your back's against the wall like that, you just fight. And it's like I said, you have no choice but to succeed.
Right.
There's that line in the Eminem song where he says, success is my only motherfucking option, failure's not. And I think that kind of is exactly where I was at that point. And I think a lot of people who go off on their own, that they take that big, huge risk, and they're like, my gosh, I've got to make this. Those sleepless nights of, working like crazy, everything you can to make it succeed because you can't fail. because
Right.
you have people that are dependent upon you, you know?
Yeah, and it's interesting because, coming from that type of experience too, there's something about when other people depend on you that you just kind of level up in terms of like the amount of ambition or drive or resilience that kind of comes to when you know that you've got all of these other responsibilities and you've got people who are depending on you to make stuff happen. So yeah, I mean, and I want to try to remember the name of the Eminem song, and it's like right on the tip of my tongue, but it comes out in 8 Mile. I know that,
yes.
right? Yeah, it's it'll come to me.
An interesting little tidbit of information. I listen to that song on repeat every morning from my apartment to the place that we were taking the bar, because the bar's 3 days. And on repeat.
All the
From-
way.
Yeah, all the way up there on 1604 where the testing site was. Every morning, man. Every morning I listen to that. For that one little lyric right there.
Right.
you know?
It's funny, right? Like that type of motivation. I mean, like music in itself too. I mean, for me is just like it can do so much, right? Like there's so much motivation behind that. And yeah, man, it's
I'm sorry. You were mentioning something earlier about how when you get started and all, and Rebecca and I were talking about it the other day. How when we got our first house, it was the coolest thing in the whole world, man. I mean, we were so happy. We were just like, oh, we're so lucky. This is the dream, And again, as you progress in life and in your career, it wasn't too long afterwards where you're like.
Yeah,
and it's
this
like
place is in
it's not that cool,
I think we
and then when we moved into the house that we're in now, say, oh my gosh, this is we've arrived,
fantastic, right?
And then after a few years, you're like, well, we recently bought a lot, and we're gonna be building a house here in a little bit.
Hey, congrats! That's awesome.
Yeah, but it's like, how can you bottle that kind of exuberance, that just like childlike wonder when you go into those situations? That's something that I wish I could have appreciated a little bit more. When you have all of these milestones, because man, if you look back, that seems like yesterday, but it seems like so long ago at the same time.
Right.
And time just flies. And it's like, going off on a bit of a tangent, I think sometimes you can become victims of your own ambition, in the sense that you're never really truly, I don't want to say not truly happy, but there's always something else. There's always something else. And
right.
so that's something that here over the last several years, I've tried to be more mindful of, just kind of more living in the moment and appreciating, like, man, I'm very blessed. I'm very, very blessed, and just appreciating what you have, as opposed to always being like, well, what's over there? What's over
What's
there?
around the corner?
What's next?
Yeah.
I want to get this. I'm going to just, chill. You know what I mean? Think you got it. Everything is great. You're very, very blessed. And so that's one of the things that I've been trying to, like I said, just be more mindful about.
Yeah.
And just making sure that I'm living each day, enjoying the journey more so. I'm the biggest, I'm when I was younger especially, I just, let's get there. And it's like, wait a minute though, part of life is the journey of life.
Right.
It's not simply the destination.
Right.
And it took me a while to really, I guess, appreciate that. I knew it, I guess. I'd heard it. Yeah, whatever. Move over. I'm on my way over here.
Right, yeah.
Don't got time for that mess.
Roses,
yeah, exactly. You
Move
smell
over
the
to the
roses.
right.
I'm going this
Yeah.
way. And I'm like, that's really what's important about life. All those little things like that. And so,
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to, I think going back to like when you're growing up, those goals of like, man, once I get my first job, or once I enter my profession, I'm going to buy this kind of car, and this has always been my dream, or this, getting this kind of house, and like, like to your point, when you moved into the house that you live now, because I know where you live, right? You got the nice HEB, so it's like, hey, let's go to the nice HEB in our nice new house, and like going in and kind of living that little part of it. And I think from a business perspective, or like from a business owner perspective, you're constantly trying to level up, right? And And typically, I think a lot of people, when people say, "Oh man, that person's super successful," they typically relate it to financial success, right? Like, "Oh man, he's doing so well. He's so successful." But I think we've seen through different people in society, even I think, within yourself, you start to realize like, okay, I want to make this much, and then you make that much, and then you're like, well, that's probably not enough. I want to make more. I want to make this much. If I make this much, I'll be happy. And then you get there and you're like, you know what? If I can just make a little bit more, I'll be like super happy. Then you start to realize that you're kind of chasing this thing that doesn't necessarily really exist, this chase of happiness, as it relates to money and success, which is kind of falsified, I think, by society, saying that in order for you to be happy, in order for you to be successful, you have to make all this money. And I think as people start to kind of chase that, right, they chase that mirage of those things, there isn't nothing that's really like self-fulfilling, right? Like there's no fulfillment in that. For you, it might be, you're able to financially gain, and then your fulfillment is sharing those achievements with your children. But I mean, there's other self-fulfillment things that you do, right? Because I mean, I know that you're really involved with the Boys and Girls Club, and you've done a whole lot of nonprofit stuff. Like I remember when there was flooding here, you went out and you helped out the city of Raymondville.
Yeah, last year.
Yeah. That was last year?
Last summer.
Wow, man, that's crazy. Time flies.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, so that I think in itself is like fulfillment. So, why do you like, I know you're involved with the Boys and Girls Club, right? So what's that about?
Yeah, so I'm past president right now, president last year. Boys and Girls Club, I think, is such an incredible organization. It helps so many of our children here in the community. And, between the hours of 3 and 7 is when most juvenile crime is committed. And the hours between 3 and 7, 4 and 7, 4 and 8, that's when kids are with the clubs at the various sites that we have and everything else like that. And so, again, growing up in Raymondville, there was nothing like that. And I have friends that kind of went off the path and wound up, in jail or dead or whatever the case may be. And, I think some of those people could have certainly benefited from something like the Boys and Girls Club. And so whenever I was given the opportunity to join the board, I immediately jumped at it. And it's been an incredibly rewarding experience. I've been on there for 4 or 5 years now, I believe. So yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, you talk about kind of that gratifying feeling of the things that you're able to offer your kids, right? The opportunities you're able to offer your kids because you're blessed, because you've got these things. But like, what are some of the other things in life that are like fulfilling to you in terms of the things that are like, those feel good moments that you get? Like, what have been some of those feel good moments where it's not necessarily related to money, but maybe it's related to a client or like a community event that you did, or something that maybe you didn't even expect that you'd get really great satisfaction from because you did something good?
Well, in law, the one case that always kind of stands out at me was a gentleman from Willacy County who was going to lose his house. He lived out at Port Mansfield, and he had he was pretty outspoken, and had rubbed some people the wrong way. And interesting, in Port Mansfield, you don't own your property. Back when the land was given to the navigation district and all was created back when it was a long time ago, there was a stipulation that they would never going to sell, and called in fee simple, meaning you own it outright. You could only lease it. And so it's typically like a 30-year lease or so, and it just gets rubber stamped. So it's technically yours, but it isn't. So what they did is they tried to use a provision in the lease that said that if you have a collection of, I believe it was rubbish is the term, those are grounds for canceling your lease. And so when they cancel your lease, they basically just take everything from you.
Your house, your car, everything that's on the property.
Well, not your car, because your car, but obviously your house. Your house, they now basically own it. Your SOL. I mean, you have no recourse. And so this gentleman, who there was an election, he supported very openly the people that didn't win, and so the powers that be went ahead and terminated his lease. He was in court one day with his wife. I was in there as well on an unrelated matter, and the judge was gently explaining to him the ruling. There was a motion for summary judgment that was filed against him by the Navigation District. He hadn't filed a response. You've got to file a response. If not, then the judge has no choice, really no discretion, but to grant the motion for summary judgment. The motion essentially is a dispositive motion. That means that, you lose. Like, the Navigation District wins, your case is gone, they're taking your house. And so the judge is gently explaining the effect of her ruling to this man. And he was a big old man, big guy, very, very intelligent. And so she's explaining this to him, and I'm seeing him, and he's in tears, and his wife is in tears, and I'm just like, holy shit, how can this happen? And I had followed the story in the local paper over there, and I kind of knew the backstory. And you know how you have one of those like out-of-body experience moments? I just stood up in this packed courtroom there in Raymondville in Williston County. And I said, Your Honor, I said, out of the blue, I'm still like, what the hell? I said, Your Honor, I said, could I have 5 minutes to speak to this gentleman? I said, I might be representing him on a pro bono basis. And she looks at me, and everybody's like, all the attorneys are like, what the hell is wrong with you? And part of me is like, yeah, Ryan, what the hell is wrong with you?
Paper shuffle, like, what's going on?
Like, what's going on here? What's going on? And so we go out into the hall, and he's kind of like, what's this all about? And I'm just talking to him, and I'm like, well, let's see if I can maybe help you with this.
Let me just make sure I'm understanding this story right. You are in the room, and what you're in the room for has nothing.
No, I have my own matter that I'm there for.
So this was just like you just.
I'm just sitting there listening, watching the show. Yeah, and just feeling for this man. And I'm just thinking, like, this sucks, man. How's this guy gonna, and I recognize you're losing it on essentially a technicality. Why? Because you didn't file a response. If you'd have filed a response, we probably would have denied the motion and everything would have been cool. So you're losing it like that.
Because he just didn't know.
Because he didn't know. Because he was representing himself.
He didn't understand.
He was representing himself, exactly. So he didn't have the money to hire a lawyer. So we go in there, and we go out in the hall, and I'm talking to him, and he says, I'll never forget this. He says, at the end, he says, so, well, how much are you going to charge me? He's like, 'cause I ain't got a lot of money. And I said, sir, I'm not going to charge you anything. And he goes, well, shit, I have that in both hands. And I was like, so we go into the courtroom. I walk in there. Right, Your Honor, Ryan Solis for Mr. Banyai asking for a continuance. Continuance is denied. Come back at 1 o'clock. We're going to argue the motion. I said, all right, cool.
You're kidding me. And then that's when the gavel went down. And wow, that's so crazy.
So we go in. And the judge calls us into chambers, and opposing counsels. I'm not going to get into it, but anyway. So we go into chambers, and then we come back at 1 o'clock. We go in at 1. I make my argument. I know that the judge is going to grant the motion because she has no choice. They file a motion for new trial. Eventually she grants the motion for new trial, which opens everything back up again, and we actually wind up going to trial, and we won. He got the house. He was able to keep the house, everything else. Jury came back in like 20 minutes or so and ruled in our favor. And the theory was it was a 14th Amendment selective enforcement, essentially, is in that similarly situated people are not being treated the same. Because at Port Mansfield, there's several people that have rubbish and whatnot in their yards, and they're not persecuted, they're not targeted, they're not gone after. The reason why he was targeted was because he had spoken out against some people.
Political. It was a political
deal, yeah. Mm-hmm. And so they're basically like, we'll silence this guy and get him the hell out of here. He wasn't originally from Port Mansfield. He'd come to Port Mansfield after a hurricane in Galveston, and came down, and
it's kind of
he was a very misunderstood guy.
Individual.
Yeah. But very intelligent man. And so anyway, that was a very long-winded answer. Man, that's awesome. that was professionally probably one of the more fulfilling cases. that I've ever had. I enjoy helping people. I enjoy nothing more than delivering to people. Again, especially people who find themselves, kind of the David and Goliath. If they're battling against a company, a lot of our cases right now, our accident cases, if you've got a company or you've got an 18-wheeler that hits somebody, well, now this person doesn't have a car. How are they going to get medical treatment? How are, they going to pay their bills? All that other stuff. So again, I just love the idea. I love the ability to step in between them and be like, nah, I can provide a voice for this person. It doesn't matter how big or how much money you have over here, because the courts basically provide an even playing field for everybody.
But those who don't understand the judicial system or don't understand the game or how it works, or I don't want to say the game, but the rules, right, can find themselves.
Oh, absolutely. There's all kind of procedure. They say that whoever, if you act, what is the saying about he who has their own attorney is a fool for an attorney, whatever. I'm butchering that one. But yeah, because there's so many procedural, it'd be like me trying to do your job. I wouldn't know all of the little ins and outs and everything else. It's like when somebody tries to be their own lawyer.
Right.
They don't know all of the little procedural. And there's so many little landmines that can get you, jump up and bite you in the butt.
Turn around over here.
Yeah, man.
Boom.
Exactly.
And so, you're screwed.
Absolutely. And so that's the situation that he found himself in.
And so with, typically I would imagine that like a lot of your clients, clients aren't necessarily in it for the money. They're probably in it for the justice, or they're trying, or they're trying to help their families in some way, shape, or form. They're kind of lost because, maybe like an accident like you were talking about with an 18-wheeler has like left them, so disabled that they can't provide for their family, they can't work, maybe they can never work, who knows, right? Depending on the severity of the injury. But, going through all of that emotional struggle of finances and family and all of these things, like on top of that, they gotta worry about how to navigate themselves through this judicial system that's complex. You really kind of have to know exactly what to do and kind of how to do it, and the processes and procedures that are involved in those things. And so what's kind of the customer, or not customer, but the client, what are their kind of worries? What are their fears? Like at what point do they want to get an attorney involved? Like what's kind of the commonality there? Yeah.
So I guess part of it's going to depend on the severity of the injury, of the accident, how badly they're injured and things like that. Some of it could be, on a smaller accident, it could be something of, mom or dad just needs the car to get to work. Mom or dad just needs to get the kids to school or to soccer practice or to whatever. And so, to come in and help them as far as either helping them get into a rental car or expediting the repair of the vehicle or whatever the case may be. So that's kind of on the lower end. Then as you were mentioning though, some of our other clients that are involved in 18-wheeler accidents, some of these people are severely injured. They're unable to work. They're unable to care for their family, and those are the ones that really find themselves in a bind. And so we, obviously we help them, and we're able to go after the 18-wheeler or whatever it was that caused the accident for them. It's not only 18-wheelers. I mean, commercial vehicles, other cars, things like that. So.
Yeah.
It's a rewarding deal. Again, it goes all the way back to growing up as a kid and seeing other people, groups of people take advantage of others.
Right.
And recognizing how unjust that was.
Right.
But recognizing as well that oftentimes those who were being taken advantage of didn't have the means or the resources or the education to defend themselves, or to, I guess, kind of tilt the scale back in their favor.
Right.
They just didn't, it was impossible. And so that's something that always, then and now, is just what gets me up, gets me out of bed in the morning, and that's just kind of my passion right there, is helping people like that.
Right.
And it's really neat that I feel, and I say this with all sincerity, I feel sometimes like the luckiest person in the world that I get to do exactly what I dreamed of doing when I was 7, 8, 9, 10 years old.
And that, I think, is the success part, right? Because if you're doing what you love, and you're doing it well and you're passionate about it and you're able to get up in the morning and do it and do it well. I mean, that to me, I feel is kind of like, you know, the successful part. So I was just kind of like, when you were telling me all of this stuff, I was like thinking about, you know, that kid that's like, you know, the bully in school, and then, you know, here's this other little kid who's kind of being picked on, and then here comes Ryan. It's kind of like, hey man, you got a problem with this guy? You got a problem with me? Like, yeah, you know, like I think that's great, man. Like, and that's a really good stand to take, because, you know, there are a lot of those kind of, you know, there are a lot of those people too, and, you know, even from going back to those things that you learned as a kid, how that stuff kind of carries through, right? Some things carry through, some things kind of change. So things that you've learned, what would you kind of say, like, how would you wrap this up? Like, what are some of the kind of the takeaways that you would give in terms of advice, success, you know?
You know, I guess just in general, one of the things that I tell my kids pretty regularly, is life's not so much about what happens to you, but how you react. Because it's real easy, I think, for people to get caught up into the whole belief that, well, I was just dealt a shitty hand, you know. And it's like, no. You have the ability to pull yourself up if necessary. You have the ability to do whatever is necessary to succeed. You know, so don't worry so much about how this happens or what comes down the pike. How are you going to respond?
Right.
That, I think, is the bigger deal. And I think as a takeaway in life is that, you know, I think our country, despite all the craziness going on right now, our country, I think, is still the greatest country in the world. And we still have all the opportunities in the world. And so it's on you at the end of the day. The easiest thing is for people to complain and moan and bitch about, well, it just didn't happen for me. Or, well, I could have done this, or I should, you know, just do it.
Right.
Just do it. Just do it. And that's I think that's probably one of the bigger takeaways that I've learned in my 42 years of life.
That's
you know, cool. It's just do it. You know, there's a lot of people talk, a lot of people, you know, it's like, it's random, but it's like Iron Man. You know, a lot of people have talked to me about that, and yeah, well, you know, I want to do an Iron Man. I've lots of people, and it's like everybody wants to be an Iron Man until it's time to do Iron Man shit. Everybody wants to be successful until it's time to do the things that are necessary for success. And, you know, I think that's the deal. Just do it. Right. Just get out there, and if you're kind of tunnel, you know, focused and you have that tunnel vision and nothing's going to stop you, there you go.
Really great stuff, Ryan. Really appreciate you coming in, man. It was awesome. It's like old times.
Yeah, you know? Exactly. Just sitting here shooting the breeze.
Yeah, I remember we used to have these talks like right after work at your old place.
Yeah.
And just have some good talks, man. So
yeah, well, I appreciate you having me, man. It was awesome.
Yeah, man. No, I appreciate the insight. Cheers, my friend.
Absolutely.
Until the next one.
Thanks, bud.